Well, I think it's exactly noon, so we promised to get people going on this. So again, thanks everyone for joining us. I know this is also going to be recorded for future use. But today we're talking to Liz Flint from MFS Funds about next generation wealth transfer. So obviously, a lot of people know they've done the right things. And then the question is, how do you talk to your family about what comes next? Because as I've often said, people don't inherit money, they inherit structures or lack thereof. And some of these processes are not well defined. So really the idea, I think Liz is going to go into more about having that real family conversation about what needs to be occurring. But I'm going to let Liz take it away and introduce herself, give a little bit of her own bio. Does that work for you, Liz?
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I am so glad to be here today. My name is Liz Flint. I work at MFS Investment Management. Now, MFS was founded back in 1924 for being the first firm to establish the mutual fund. So it's an investment management firm that is based in Boston, Massachusetts, and we work very closely with advisors and teams like the O'Hare Wealth Management team to bring you options and solutions for your savings needs. So what they'll do is they'll sometimes work with us to bring you also topics that are important to you. So I've been with MFS now for 22 years. And in my role, what I do is we talk to people, advisors and clients around the country on issues that are coming up for them. And what are some of the tools and resources available to, make sure that you have all of those things at your fingertips. So I'm really excited about today's conversation in regards to successfully transferring wealth to the next generation. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that okay, JJ?
Yes, I can. Okay. I see the whole presentation. There we go. Perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So in our country, when assets are transferred from one generation to the next, 70% of the time, those assets are gone within the first generation. And 50% of the time, they are gone within the first 10 years. So I don't know about you, but if I thought that for just 1 second, my 2 kids were going to rip through everything that I've worked for, saved for, and invested in just 10 years, I would spend that money right now because that would be really, really frustrating for me. So today what I want to do is I actually just want to go through, okay, what are some of the ways that we can communicate with our family members to make sure that that transfer of assets is successful within your family? Why are some of the reasons why transfers fail? And what are some of the tools and resources that you can be using to make sure that that doesn't happen to you and that doesn't happen to your family? So you might think it's a little interesting that we start with communication, but I like to start here because when you take a look at why transfers fail, 60% of the time, those transfers fail because there is a breakdown in communication. Whenever we're talking to individuals and families, they know that these conversations need to be had. They know that they want to make sure that their heirs and their loved ones know their wishes, but they don't necessarily want to talk about money, or they don't necessarily want to talk about how much money is in your bank account or how much money are they going to inherit. So right there, we already have that communication dilemma because they think to themselves, okay, if I disclose that information, I have this fear that my kids are just going to get really greedy. Or maybe when they know how much money is coming their way, they might not strive to do what they wanted to do in life. So what I would suggest is maybe we just rethink that. So instead of thinking the way of, hey, listen, I need to communicate how much money they're going to get, maybe we restructure that and we think, okay, how can I start communicating with clarity and let my loved ones know the impact that I want this money and I want this inheritance to make? Or how can I communicate with them that this is what I want them to accomplish in their lifetimes? but also how can I articulate to them that they will be the stewards of this family's capital? And that is, in fact, a really, really big responsibility. So right there, we already have to start thinking about, okay, what are some of the things that we can be doing to communicate our wishes? What are some of these things that we can be doing to communicate with clarity? And we'll get to some of those as we go through this presentation. So let's go first through the reason why transfers fail. And today I'm going to share with you 4 reasons why transfers fail. But when I talk about what is a failed wealth transfer, it typically falls onto one of 4 things. If you're paying too much in taxes, if your estate is getting caught up in the court system, if there's in-family fighting that occurs within your family, or if your heirs are spending down that inheritance in its entirety. So if one of those 4 things happen, that goes into that failed wealth transfer category. And again, in our country, if something like that were to happen, 70% of the time, those assets are they're lost within that first generation. So let's take a look at the 4 main reasons why transfers fail. Number 1, children don't have enough money or enough experience managing money. So think about it this way. We do an exceptional job of preparing our assets for our heirs, yet we don't spend a lot of time preparing our heirs to successfully take receipt of those assets. So many times what we'll find is that when somebody inherits a large sum of money, they automatically think to themselves, oh my gosh, I've won the lottery. Or they think to themselves, oh my gosh, I have all this money, I can spend it, and they spend it down. So again, that kind of falls within that failed transfer definition. So when you think about that, what are some of the tools and resources that are available to you that you can be doing with children of any age? Well, there is a great website out there. It's called moneysavvy.com. Moneysavvy.com. This is a great website because what it does is it actually gives you the tools and resources to start having some of these conversations about money with kids from a very early age. So there's a piggy bank on there that's divided into sections. Save, donate, invest, spend. So from an early age, they know that there's different buckets for money. As those kids get a little bit older, they become teenagers. The official guide to money for teenagers, which is written in language that teenagers can understand. They get a little bit older, they go off to college, that off to college budget workbook. They then graduate, they get that first job, first paycheck. So there's just a lot of really useful tools on here where you can start having these conversations with children from a very young age. The other 2 ideas when we talk about, okay, let's teach our children about money, a couple things. The first or the next idea is bring your children in, whether you're their children, whether they're your grandchildren, bring them in every time that you go in to talk to the O'Hare team, because what this is doing is it's giving them the experience of walking into a wealth advisor's office where they will start to hear the vocabulary that is being used. They will start to see what the team is doing for your families, and they will start to know and be comfortable asking questions. And then the third idea is consider opening up a Roth IRA for a loved one. And now I know someone on the O'Hare team can go into more detail, but consider this. Let's say you have a child, or let's say you have a grandchild that just turned 16. They are saving, they want to buy a car for the first time, and they get that first job. Now, what you say to them is, for every dollar that you earn, what I'm going to do is I am going to match that. So maybe they earn $1,500, they go out, they buy that car, but what you've done is match that $1,500. Now, you might think to yourself, well, what I'm doing is just giving them the gift of $1,500. Well, yes, you're doing that, But in reality, what you're doing is you are now giving them the experience of getting an investment statement on that account for the rest of their lives. So what you're giving them is that gift of seeing what a statement looks like, of seeing how the market goes up, how the market goes down, or the value in that account can go up, it can go down, it can go up again. That is the gift that you are giving them. So when we think about children and we think about, again, whether it's children or grandchildren in our life, give them that experience of managing money, because if they can manage their money and they are responsible with managing their money, the chances of them managing the money that they inherit is that much higher. So that is the first reason why transfers fail, is because children don't have enough experience managing money. Number two, children fight over what they perceive to be unfair. So let me give you an example. Aretha Franklin. So I'm sure we're all familiar with Aretha Franklin. So when I think of Aretha Franklin, I think of respect, RESPECT. Well, unfortunately, Aretha didn't have enough respect for her assets, and I will explain why. When she passed away in 2018, she passed away with 4 children, 4 sons who were living in harmony around her. Now, the children of the Queen of Soul are duking it out in court to find out who is going to take control over the late singer's multi-million-dollar estate. Because Aretha, she didn't have a formal typed out will or anything like that. When she passed away, they discovered multiple copies of what her wishes were. Now, one was signed with a smiley face and it was found stuffed in a sofa. Another was a notarized document from 2010. Now, the rumors are it could have been in the bathroom, it might have been in the pantry. But either way, is that both of these documents split her royalties amongst her children and required 3 of the boys to support her 4th son who had a disability. But where these documents differ is who gets control over that personal property and who takes control of that estate. So now all of a sudden, her children are fighting about who gets the house, who gets the gold-plated Mercedes, who gets the jewelry, who gets those fur coats that she famously wore when she was on stage. So with that being said, now you can see that because of that, her children who were living in harmony are now fighting with each other in court. Another reason for a failed transfer. So we want to make sure that we communicate with clarity about what our wishes are. Now, I'm sure most of you have wills and trusts, which is fantastic, but you can actually take it one step further with a few additional documents. The first is called a letter of intent. Now, it is not a legal document, but what it is it is a letter that you will write and you get it notarized and you just write down what your wishes are. It's all in your own words of what you want your inheritance to do, how you want it to be split, who you want it to go to. But the thing is that you want it to follow exactly what's in your trust. They have to mirror each other, but instead of using legal language, you're using your own vocabulary. So sit down and just write it out. And the second thing that you can do is you can pick up your phone. You can put it on a tripod and you could just record yourself, almost as if you were talking to a judge, right? Take 15, 20 minutes. And again, just really lay out what your wishes are. So there was a court case that occurred in there was a court case that occurred in Kansas City. I don't know, it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where there were 3 adult children who were contesting a will. They totally thought it was unfair. But what their father had done before he had passed away is he actually recorded himself talking about what his wishes are, why he divided things a certain way, what his intent was, what he was looking for. It completely matched the will, but what it did was it added color and depth. So the judge reviewed it, again, not a legal document, but the judge reviewed it. He saw that it totally matched what the will said. And he said, you know what, we're not breaking it. We're not doing that. So the more that you can write down, the more that you can talk and communicate with your loved ones about what your intentions are, the better. So that's the second reason why transfers fail, is because they're going to fight over what they perceive to be unfair. Number 3 is they fight over the timing of distributions and when those distributions are going to be paid out. Now, what we do in the United States is classic. We name our strongest child. Some people might call it their alpha child, the trustee of our estate. And we need to stop doing that. We need to pick somebody outside of our children to be the disposition officer of our estate. Because here's what happens. Let's just say, for the sake of example, my parents name me as the trustee of their estate, but not my brother. So if something were to happen to my parents, my brother's going to come to me and say, you know what, Liz, I need $25,000 because my buddies and I are heading up to Las Vegas. To which I'm going to tell him that is a terrible idea. Why? Because that is a terrible idea. But also, what this is doing is this is now making me the bad guy amongst my brothers, where I have to make those decisions and I have to tell them no. What Matt's going to do 30 days from later is he's going to come back to me and say, hey, Liz, why can't I have that money? Why can't we just take it out of the estate? Just deduct it from my portion. Again, making me the bad guy, creating that in-family fighting that we talked about. And we want to make sure that we avoid that. So do not name a child, name an attorney, name a friend, name an aunt, name an uncle, because what you're doing here is you are creating that lack of harmony in your family. So name somebody who is not your children. And then the fourth reason why transfers fail is because kids fight over property, whether it is the family home that they grew up in, whether it is a second home, maybe it is a family cottage that you've had in your family for years. So in my family, we have a family cabin up in Pine Top, Arizona. So Pine Top is about 3.5 hours northeast of Phoenix. It's a great mountain town. It's nice and cool in the summertime when it's 187 degrees in Phoenix. I have been going there since I was a kid. Some of my most fond memories are up at the cabin. My parents are still alive, but I know what's going to happen. I know that they are leaving that cabin. They're leaving it to my brothers and I equally. So they'll leave a third of it to my brother, Mike. Mike lives in Atlanta with his wife and 2 kids. They'll leave a portion to me. I live in Phoenix with my 2 boys. And then they'll leave the last to my brother, Matt, who also lives in Phoenix. Matt's not married. Matt doesn't have kids. Now, it is a great idea in theory. It really is. My parents want the family cabin to stay in that family so their children and grandchildren and future generations can go and create those memories that are so ingrained in us. But here's what's going to happen in reality. Mike wants to be sold out. Mike's not going to fly across the country to drive 3.5 hours to go to the cabin. Mike says, I want to be bought out, to which Matt and I say, we can't do that. I go up there all the time. It's 3.5 hours. We jump in the car. We go up there. We are there a lot. I want to remodel, to which Mike says, I'm not doing that. I want to be bought out. And Matt says, no. Matt, we all love Matt, but Matt's more of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of guy. So if Matt doesn't have happy hour on Friday or a golf game on Saturday, then he'll go to the cabin for the weekend. And we all know that that doesn't work. So what my parents have done, to no fault of their own, is they, again, have created that in-family fighting that we talked about. They have now created tension amongst my brothers and I. So if you do have a piece of property, you'll want to make sure that you set that up for successful transfer amongst your heirs. There's a great book out there. It's produced by No Low Press. It's called Saving the Family Cottage, but it can actually be anything in regards to saving a piece of property. It can go to a second home, a cottage, just your primary residence, whatever that is. But what this book does that is so great is it actually sets up that piece of property for successful transfer to the next generation. So again, it's called Saving the Family Cottage, and it's produced by No Low Press. So those are the 4 reasons why transfers fail. So let's get into the good news, right? Because the good news is that with a little bit of effort and with a little bit of planning, you can prevent these things from happening. So what I want to do is I want to share with you some additional resources that I think will be helpful. The first is books. So a number of different books that I think are really great when we talk about and think about communicating with our loved ones. The first is called The Giving Family, Raising Our Children to Help Others. Now, what makes this book really great is that it actually talks about philanthropy. And how do we start to talk to our family about philanthropy? So this book is divided into sections. It's divided into 3 sections. That first section is going to be for talking to kids under the age of 12 about philanthropy. What are some of the things that they can be doing to give back? Maybe they start a penny drive or a book drive. The second part of the book is going to be working with teenagers, again, in regards to giving back. What are some of the things that they have or they can be doing to be philanthropic? Maybe it's working at a soup kitchen, or maybe it is helping at a Special Olympics race. And then the third, or the last third of the book, is dealing with adult children. And what are some of the things that they can be doing to raise their game, and understanding that part of this inheritance is for the benefit of others. The next book is called Inspired Philanthropy by Tracy Gary. And what this book does is it is a step-by-step guide on how to talk to our kids, whether our kids are 10 or 30 or 50, about our thoughts about philanthropy and our thoughts about caring for others. It creates wonderful conversation without talking about assets. And it's very, very structured. It has worksheets and questionnaires and boxes to check and things that you can be doing with your family in regards to your philanthropic efforts. The next one is Raised Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise by Coventry Edwards Pitt. Now, what the author of this book did is she interviewed the children of families that successfully transferred their wealth. So these families were very wealthy, very transparent. And what she did was she interviewed the children and said, okay, what did your parents do that was so great, that was so helpful? So what you get as a reader is you get 12 or 13 different stories from different families where all of that wealth transfer was successful. So again, hopefully you're able to pick up 1 or 2 things that you might be able to be doing with your family. And then the last book is called The Ultimate Gift by Jim Stovall. So for anybody in your family who I would like to call maybe just a little bit less capable, maybe they're still trying to get their financial feet under them, maybe they're more on the creative side, maybe they're just trying different things, they're not quite putting everything together. The Ultimate Gift actually gives you step-by-step instructions on how to coach that child on financial responsibility and helping them understand what an inheritance is supposed to do. So all really great books. Now let's move on to some of the resources that are available to you that you can certainly get through the O'Hare Wealth Management team if you find them helpful. So let me share a couple. The first is the Philanthropic Giving Made Easy worksheet. What this worksheet does that is so great is it allows you to have the conversation about philanthropy with your loved ones. So you'll notice it's kind of a blank sheet. What it allows you to do is write down what are the organizations where you're making contributions, what foundations, or what charities do you support? What is the legacy that you want your family to leave behind when you're thinking about these organizations? Now, what I think is so great about this particular worksheet is that you can actually invite other family members to put in organizations that are important to them, whether it's the adult children that you have in your life that are currently making those contributions, or maybe it's children or grandchildren where they want to be part of it, and you can have them include it. And then that way, all of your loved ones are part of your giving back. So when you think about your legacy and where you want that money to go, this is a great way to highlight that, but then also to start that conversation with your heirs. Now, the other resource that I really like is called Family Love Letter. And that is exactly where you'll go to find it, familyloveletter.com. And for about $30, you can pick one up. But what this book does is it allows you to write everything down. So it's a 35-page workbook that allows you to write down the contact information for your attorney, for your accountant. It allows you to write down, are there any liens against me that a loved one might come after me for? But the part that I really like is called the document locator, which lists the 30 most important documents that any of us own. And then next to each one, there's a line item where you can actually write down, okay, what is this document? Why was this document created? When was this document created? Where can I find this document? Is it online? Is there a password to get it? Because for anybody who has ever had to settle an estate, you know that it is a marathon of activity, of documents to collect, of paperwork to find, of information to gather. And unfortunately, you are being asked to do it during a time of crisis. So what this particular workbook allows you to do is start collecting all of that information ahead of time. But more importantly, it allows you to start having those conversations with your loved ones. So it's not only a great win for you, but it is a great win for your family. So I know we went over a lot of different ideas today. Communicating with clarity. We talked about the different reasons why transfers fail, but then also what are some of the really great tools and resources that are available to you so you can make sure that the transfer of wealth is successful in your family. So when you think about that, this is one of the things that the O'Hare Wealth Management team, these are the conversations that they can help quarterback between you and your family members. So with that being said, I would like to say thank you so much for your time today. JJ, I will turn it back to you to see if there's any questions or if you have any closing comments.
Yeah, Liz, I know Megan's going to gather up some of the questions we've been getting in, but I really do
awesome.
want to thank you for coming in and talking about some of these things, because for us, we know, you talk about failed transfers. We know that it's a little bit hard to measure, but the odds are about 90% that wherever your parents came from, your grandkids are going to return to from an socioeconomic standard. Most transfers don't work. That's why it's so important to get these things right. I know we've done a lot more work and are still working on trying to create some of the things, some of the tools you're talking about in terms of how do you leave messages to loved ones and organizing that, and not at a time where it's a panic at the last second. So now, if you want to read some boring economics papers on those things, I can always forward that to the listeners as well. But Megan, I know you had some questions come in. Do you want to read back some of those?
Yeah, we did get a handful of questions from our viewers. First one, Liz, what age do you think is appropriate to start having these conversations with children?
Yeah. So in regards to children, I think the earlier the better when it comes to money, when it comes to understanding money, when it comes to bringing them in, when you meet, when you set up an account, when you set up a 529, anything like that, just getting them that exposure, the better. When it comes to some of these maybe family meetings or talking about becoming the stewards of this family's capital, and really having those conversations. I would say about 30 to 35, if your children are about 30 to 35, is really when you'll want to start bringing them in to have those serious, more serious. But again, I think you can have the conversation with kids from an early age, and you can just structure it based on how old they are.
Perfect. And then for the sake of time, we're going to cover one more question here. We had a viewer ask about a situation where there's an only child. So in the instance of just having an only child, one child, would you still recommend that the child not be named as trustee, or how would you approach that?
Yeah, so the feedback that I've heard and the people that I've talked to do recommend, if you have an only child, not to name them. Only because they have skin in the game when it comes to this. So the recommendation is to actually bring in someone who doesn't have skin in the game, whether it's, like I said, an attorney, whether it's a friend, maybe it's an aunt or uncle, and someone who can really devote their time and energy and effort into settling that estate. Because again, we all know that when you settle an estate, it's a lot of work. It's a big time commitment, but the feedback is, kind of keep them out of it, bring somebody else in who doesn't have that skin in the game.
Perfect. And for those that are watching this as a replay, definitely feel free to email follow-up questions to us. We're happy to engage Liz or to lean on our resources and help answer any additional questions you might have. And any of those questions can be sent to us at our service inbox at service@o'harewealth.com. Take it away, JJ.
No, Liz, I want to thank you again for coming in and talking to our clients, because for us, this is, as I said before, it's an incredibly important issue. And this is, we can do a lot from an investment standpoint to get things right and put things in place. But if it's not communicated well and it's not, the intent isn't there, that can fall flat pretty quick. So it's the next level of things that we're looking forward to doing with people.
No, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, I think with us, that we're a little bit over time, so we're going to close it here. But thank you again, Liz. I do appreciate it. I appreciate all the time.
You're welcome. Have a good one. Thanks
everybody who joined us. Appreciate it.